Hey everyone, we've been talking about the Spectre during the Golden Age in a couple of videos. And after him going through his origins, becoming a superhero, being a founding member of the JSA, we're now going to cover the end of his career during this particular era of comic book history, and basically what happens before he disappears for 20 years. So be sure to stay tuned to the end of this video, and for those of you who aren't subscribed to Comic Island, make sure you do so for more character histories. While Corrigan was still helping out the JSA, one day the detective discovered his friend, Tim Donovan, had gone missing. As he raced off to investigate this disappearance, his supernatural senses suddenly detected a presence in the trunk of his car. Corrigan discovered a young man named Percival Popp, the Super Cop, an amateur obsessed with fictional detectives that wanted to use their methods to solve real crimes. Percival wanted to work with Jim Corrigan, but Jim was completely disinterested as he always worked alone as a police detective. Nevertheless, Percival followed along, much to the ire of Jim Corrigan. The young lad was able to deduce that Tim Donovan was being threatened by a mysterious individual called the Avenger, impressing Corrigan, but not wanting to endanger Percival, he turned into the Spectre and hung him up on a tree. As the Avenger began threatening others, the Spectre noted that these men were all connected through the same company, while Percy escaped and discovered these people were vanishing in plain sight. When Percival tried to help, he too disappeared. It turns out the Avenger was a scientist named Mortimer Crandall, who was using a device to capture people responsible for firing the villainous man from a demanding job. Fortunately, the Spectre was able to save Percival, but Mortimer had a special invention ready to force the Spectre under his hypnotic control. With some quick thinking, Percy tripped the Spectre, breaking Jim free of the hypnosis and allowing the Spectre to take Mortimer to a special nebula that purged the scientist of all evil thoughts. With that, the day was saved, though Percy was so encouraged by this, he promised to always stay by Corrigan's side, and the older detective realized eluding Percy would become a new ongoing duty for the superhero, and could very well prove a greater task than fighting crime. Percival became determined to prove himself to the Central City police detective. The young man saw an escaped prisoner named Gat Cheney, who Corrigan had put away, trying to break into Jim's home. Percival was attacked when he tried to stop this home invasion, and so Jim became the Spectre to help out the so-called Super Cop. Fed up with this, Jim decided to take Percival out into space, leaving him millions of light years away on a tiny planet just so he could get some sleep, since as everyone knows, although ghosts don't breathe, they definitely need 8 hours of good sleep every night, just like humans. Next day, Jim nearly forgot Percival, and the Spectre had to save the young man from an alien. Though Corrigan found the whole affair amusing, Percival shared in his dislike of the terrifying superhero with the rest of the Central City Police Department, insisting that one day Popp and Corrigan would capture the Spectre together, not realizing that the Spectre and Corrigan were the same person. When finally returned home, Percival decided to help Jim by getting him back together with his ex-fiancée, Clarice Winston. Percival came upon Clarice getting a portrait done of herself, and she told the young man about how Jim was the one who broke off their engagement and seemed to want to keep her at a distance. Percival agreed to talk to Corrigan, but on his way to do so, he noticed the artist painting Clarice behaving oddly, while Clarice seemed to be getting weaker ever since the stranger started painting her. Percival spied on the artist, a man named Armand, and saw him drive up to a dock and throw a strange figure into the city's river. Percival told Jim about all of this, and Corrigan agreed to look into the matter. They had went to Clarice only to learn she had fallen deathly ill, confirming their growing suspicions of foul play. However, when the two started investigating, Percival decided to dive into the river to look for the figure dumped there. It is at that moment Jim realized that this was all happening in the same river where Corrigan initially drowned, in the exact same spot where his body was dumped. If Percival found the body, it would mean that everyone would have learned that Jim Corrigan died a long time ago and he is nothing more than a spirit. So the Spectre dove into the water and found his own body, still stuck in the barrel of cement it was drowned in. The Spectre reached out to the very same presence that initially revived him as a spirit, and in response to Corrigan's many good deeds on Earth, they allowed him to return his own body to life. The barrel shattered, and Jim woke up, restored, while the Spectre faded away. He swam up to the surface, where he quite literally bumped into Percival, showing the young man that he had recovered the metal figure while he was down there. Armand the artist then confronted the two at gunpoint, explaining that he is obsessed with using black magic and the metal figure to steal human souls through his painting. Throwing it in the river was an essential part of the ceremony to take Clarice's soul, which is why she fell deathly ill immediately after he did so. But now Armand needs the figure back, so he knocks Percival out and shoots Corrigan 3 times. Jim Corrigan thought he was about to be killed again mere moments after his resurrection, only to find Armand's bullets go right through him. Corrigan had retained his superpowers, and turning into the Spectre once more, he easily defeated Armand, forcing the artist to vanish completely. Thanks to his resurrection, Corrigan decided that was reason enough to patch things up with Clarice, and they got back together again, much to the delight of Percival. And with his superpowers still intact, Corrigan's time as the Spectre was hardly over either. Though he still remained a part of the JSA and would often think of the Spectre as a spirit of sorts living within him, Corrigan began living his new life a little more, taking a backseat in his own adventures, spending more time with Clarice, and acting as a bit more of a guide for Percival Pop to grow as a detective, though Corrigan would never hesitate to use his powers to save Percival and others. Working with Percy, they were able to defeat a long string of villains, including the Headman, who actually didn't have a head, an illusionist named Kati Lugi, a crooked businessman named Mr. Chiseller, and a master of hypnotic colors called Spectrum, along with many others. They would fight crimes ranging from grand theft to fraud involving junk war bonds. And in spite of all the changes to Jim Corrigan, some things still remained the same. The police continued to hate the Spectre, while Jim was repeatedly ordered by his captain to focus on capturing the vigilante, in spite of how clearly powerful and well-meaning the spirit was. On one occasion, when it came to a truly powerful foe, a deadly elementalist named Maligno, the Spectre stood against this being alone. But this was rare, and otherwise, Percival remained persistently at Jim's side, no matter what Corrigan did. Though Jim tried to maintain an aloof personality around the young man, in an attempt to keep Percy at a distance, allowing his Spectre persona to work more with him instead. This caused Percival to start liking the Spectre more, while Jim slowly began warming up a bit more to Percival in general. The two became a formidable team by the time Jim was finally called upon to serve in World War II. Unbeknownst to the JSA, while he was off to war with them, he had split himself into 2 different personas. A powerless copy of Jim went off to war, filling his draft requirements as a living man, while a copy worked as a Spectre, working both invisibly on the home front and helping out publicly with the Justice Battalion. To avoid confusion, the Spectre stayed invisible while working with Percival, helping the young man continue his fight against crime while Jim was away. Percy soon realized this and found himself in the company of a ghost, with the young man now being followed by Corrigan relentlessly and even having to put this version up in his home, allowing the Spectre to sleep in his own bed, since, as far as Clarice knew, Jim was off to war. Together, the two defeated a slew of criminals and went on many adventures, keeping their home of Central City safe. By the end of their time working together, Percy had become an adept detective on his own. When Jim returned from war, he allowed Percival to work on his own and focused on helping the JSA protect America a little more. For a brief time, he worked to combat threats with a team of all sorts. One such adventure involved the team being flung back in time. The Spectre found himself in 1815, where he prevented Robert Fulton, inventor of the steamboat, from being killed, before he was sent back to the present with the rest of the team. Seeing the various intolerances of the past put towards new ideas and those who are different, the entire JSA was moved to make a public statement about how America is supposed to be for all, regardless of race, color, or religion, and vowed to combat this together. However, the next adventure would prove to be the Spectre's last for a very long time. The Justice Society was alerted to the actions of Psycho Pirate, a dangerous criminal who was able to bring out the rage, hate, and sorrow in men. He sent a taunting letter to the JSA, warning of 6 crimes he had planned, and each crime requiring a member of the team to overcome a certain emotion. The Spectre was tasked with fighting a crime involving greed, an emotion that he felt he had already conquered in life. As he began to unfold a plot involving bribery, the Spectre was dosed with a toxic gas that nearly overwhelmed him, thanks to his greedy attempts at solving the crime quickly. With some quick thinking, the Spectre survived the gas attack and nearly caught Psycho Pirate himself. Corrigan joined with the rest of the team, and they defeated the villain together. Though victorious, this marks the last known adventure of the Spectre during this era. Jim Corrigan lost his powers, and the Spectre persona mysteriously vanished completely, with no explanation. For the next 20 years, Jim worked as a police detective, left to wonder what happened to one of the most powerful forces that ever walked on Earth 2.